All right, I think we're live. Kendra, good to see you. Today we're going to host a conversation on SEO and AEO
Mhm.
and just really talk about one of the things one of the topics that we're hearing a lot about was also talked a good bit about at WebflowConf like 2 weeks ago. And we're hearing it a ton from different people in marketing as well as technologists. Like they're having questions on how to be able to kind of work with all this stuff. And I think, Kendra, you've got a really great perspective, which is thinking about how to look at this. But yeah, so maybe first what we could do is just give me a snapshot of for people that are, kind of hearing about AEO, what's the best way to think about AEO and what is it?
Yeah, so you can think about AEO as its own entity. You can also think about AEO as something that works in conjunction with or alongside SEO right now, at least. A way to describe AEO is basically this is about being the answer when making your brand the answer. When
Yep.
someone asks a answer engine about, whatever they're asking about, right? So they type into Google, what's a really great Webflow agency? Or they type in, how do I do X? The bots are going to aggregate answers from across the web to answer that question.
Yep.
The issue with this is, or the way that this is different, it's not even an issue really, it's just the new order of things is that what you used to do, obviously, is you would type that into Google or Bing, and it would give you immediately a link to the best answer to that question, to the best source, playing on various different ways that we all have learned to manipulate getting to the top of that page, right? Well, it's just not the way it works anymore. So those links are buried. They're part of the information that the answer engines are using to populate their answer. And most of the time, people take a lot longer to click into a website now. They're reading those answers rather than immediately jumping into your owned property, which is what you want them to do. So keyword stacking and getting to the top of the page and all of that SEO stuff that we've talked about for a long time, it's getting less important, or it's becoming something that it works alongside a good AEO practice. SEO is about being found. AEO is about being the answer when someone does
Mhm.
find you. So
That makes sense. And well, Kendra, let's get into it. What are the shifts that you're seeing firsthand as it relates to kind of traffic as well as brand discovery?
well, I have a slide for that actually, if I can
Okay.
share my screen.
Also, and you might need to move your mic up again. It sounds like the mic went.
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
Sorry, I was
Yeah.
doing about 3 things at once here. So, yeah, let me share my screen.
Awesome.
All right. All right. So basically, what we have here is, there's been I would call it an inevitable drop in organic traffic, that is attributable to AEO with Google visits kind of, starting to trend down a little bit and ChatGPT visits trending up. If we follow, as our lovely chart does, follows that line out to where they intersect, we're looking at somewhere around 2030 is what the estimations are, is that ChatGPT as a search engine or a search tool is going to surpass Google at that point. That is not to say that Google is going away. That just means that Google's Gemini and its own answer engine results are going to be where people are going to be getting their information before you reach any of those blue links that we are all scrambling to get to the top of. So that's the changes that we've seen so far, and so that and all of that buzz are the things that people are thinking about in terms of, oh gosh, what does that mean to my
Right.
brand? What does that mean to the traffic that I'm going to be getting to my website?
Amazing. And then, so as we see kind of like this intersection of, keyword search kind of going down and answer clusters going up, what do you think, like, what do you think marketing teams should keep in mind as they're looking at the road ahead?
Well, I think that it's a combination of things. I mean, SEO isn't dying, not at
Yep.
least yet. It's becoming sort of a yes and, right?
Yep.
As I said before, kind of SEO gets you found, AEO gets you chosen.
Mhm.
One of the things that I didn't kind of complete that thought with is that by the time people get to your site through answer engines, through whatever way that they're getting there, they're more ready to engage with you at this point. So that kind of means that, well, I'll start with my part of this. Um, Being able to have a website that is at the point that those people get there, ready for them to engage with you, that has your brand clear and front and center, that has a good story, that has good UX, that is built for humans in the way that we've always said that we want to build the web for humans, right? We're looking at the way your audiences need to consume information. We're looking at the way that the questions that they want to, the goals that they have in engaging with you,
Yep.
and building toward that. So that's like number one. And then secondly, you're going to be looking at looking at figuring out what else to do for the answer engine bots that's maybe a little bit different. You will want to be, and we kind of have a process for this. Um, Looking at common questions that people are asking about things in your industry, and then making sure that your website answers those things, and that your brand is connected to it. Looking at getting authority in the greater internet world, meaning people are writing about you and mentioning your brand and your name and the things that you're good at out there. Because what the search engines, or sorry, the answer engines do is they're aggregating. They're looking around and they're going to choose kind of the path of least resistance to finding the
Yep.
right answer, right? So they're indeterminate, I believe is the word. And so that means that they are looking around and saying, okay, I'm going to ask this question 17 different ways and see what the delta of all of the 17 answers that I get are, and then
Yep.
put that out there in the world. So that means that I guess it means a couple of things. You have to be showing up in an authoritative way all over the internet, not just by putting the right specific words into your website. You want to be creating authority through other sources. Other people are writing about you, the content you put out there into the world that leads you back to your website. It also means that brand voice and story becomes even more important, right? Because you can ask the question, and if you can ask a generic question, and getting back to your brand is going to require specificity in language and tone and story. So that's kind of the beginning of that path.
And then for, for brands specifically, how does it become like a differentiator, not just sort of like nice words? Like what is that? What is that approach, or what's sort of the value there?
Well, I mean, there's kind of two things. I mean, anybody who's approaching both SEO and AEO right at this point in time is creating a competitive difference for themselves. So not everyone is thinking about this. Not everyone knows how to make it happen. Anybody who's going down this path is going to create a better answer. They're going to become
Mhm.
the answer more often. Secondly, just taking the time to stand back and do the work of brand, to figure out what your differentiators are, to know your audience's dead to rights and know what they want from you and what's going to connect with them, to be able to tell that story both consistently and clearly over and over and
Yep.
over again. If you don't, there is no there for you to even build on.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of my biggest message is like, story is we've spent a really long time somehow in the last few years thinking about like marketing automation and clicks and creating like just that right message, like in 700 different variations for the right person. Uh-oh. Did I go
Oh,
away?
I just changed the layout.
Oh,
It's
I was like,
okay.
oh no, I'm gone.
Yeah.
You're scaring me. All right. So we spent a long time in this world where we're creating, just the right message for just the right specific person, and trying to kind of like work those metrics in the way that we get the right eyes and the right clicks out there. But I think that the pendulum is swinging, and you realize after a while, or I think we have realized after a while, fortunately for me, I suppose, that getting that foundational story, if you don't do that, you don't know where to start. You have no there. So that is that's kind of like the biggest advocation. If you, and also, with regard to AEO, we always used to say, it's not how you tell your story, it's how everybody else tells your story. It's not even that anymore. It's not how you tell your story, or if you don't tell your story, the bots are going to tell it for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you want to make sure that, you have created enough of that story out there in a consistent, authoritative way on your own site and out in the world, that the bots are going to tell it the way that you want it told. And so
Yep.
that's where we're starting with brand.
Yeah. And I think that as we've been looking at it, it's interesting because there has to be so much emphasis on true clarity of what you're really trying to communicate.
Correct.
And, I think while you want to be able to clearly define your brand, you also have to be able to like clearly define the product and what it does and why people should care about it. And in some ways, take out like, there's sort of a directness that has to happen with how, some of the, maybe not the why, but the what and the how of a product is conveyed. And then from there, I think starting to layer on emotion becomes maybe more of a challenge. How do you see that intersection? And maybe this is just something that we're all still figuring out, like how to have a brand voice that can then be retold. And what does that start to look like?
I think that that is obviously something that we're all sort of trying to figure out, and trying to figure out how the answer engines and the bots out there are even parsing that
Yep.
kind of information. Are they stripping that kind of sentiment entirely out of
Yeah.
what they're returning? My theory is, again, back to what I was saying earlier, I think they're going to take the path of least resistance. And so if you give them whatever way you're doing it, whether it's you're creating that entire kind of like shadow site that is built just for bots, that isn't human consumable, that you're using the LLM.txts, that you're using all the schema markup, you're using all of those kind of like back end things to say things the way you specifically want to say them. You do it enough times and you
Yep.
seed that out into the world in other places, the bot is just going to start to connect your brand name with that voice, with that story told that way. It's at least right now, it's kind of a feed them the information. Very they're not very savvy right now. Now, this may change.
Yeah.
So they're easily led. We'll just say that. And again, 6 months from now, we may be talking about an entirely different strategy. But right now, the strategy is like, be really consistent. Put on your site, this is our position statement. Like whether
Yeah.
that's like, you don't want to say that to a human, but somewhere under the surface, somewhere in the schema, somewhere in that text file, it's like, our position statement is X. I mean, literally that specific.
Yeah. Yeah. And even looking at, I know that when we redesigned our site, we focused a lot on question answer pairs.
Yes.
How do you think teams should go about getting those question answers? Like where do those strategists and copywriters kind of fit in within this process?
Well, there are manual ways to do this, and then there are tools that can help. And two that I know of, and I assume I can talk about the one that we're building. Can I do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, good. That frees up a lot of stuff. So, the one way to do it manually is basically just to go out there and do the manual research, like do the desk research and search the things that you think that your customers are asking to get to you, or that they should be, and seeing what answers you get. Right. You can, the answer engine cite sources, you can see what it is, you can use your deductive reasoning skills to see why it is that they're using X answer over Y answer. How many times, say, a competitor or something just completely out of the realm of rationality shows up in your answers as an answer. And you can kind of get a sense of what they're, how they're getting to where they're getting. So that's one way to manually do it. There are also two tools. We use a combination of Profound, which has a ability to go out there and search for how your brand is showing up in the answer engines and giving you kind of realish answers about how that's legitimately happening right now. So
Yep.
you can start to course correct your messaging, your schema, your alt text, your all the things that the bots are reading. And then also go out there and get, other people to write about you. And then secondly, we also use one that we're developing, which is called AEO Press, which has a functionality that gives you the ability to it gives you kind of an AI generated list of questions that you might want to answer. And it also will tell you, are you already answering them on your
Yeah.
property? And how could you do better? So kind of two routes. So tooling helps
Yeah.
unless you really want to dig in manually. And I would, recommend, like with any brand, just go do some searching. Like go ask ChatGPT, go ask, Gemini, go ask Claude what it thinks about your business, and then you can learn a lot that way. And then what it thinks about your category. Who's it going to give you
Yep.
if you ask for a general question?
Yeah. I was talking with a customer just this week, and they had mentioned that they hadn't gone and created comparison pages on their site because they didn't want to have that linkage.
Yeah,
And one of the things we brought back to them is like, well, that linkage is happening no matter what.
right.
And people are going to be comparing your brand to other brands. And either you can say something about it, or your other brand, your competitor, is actually going to say that about you.
Yes,
And so I think that it is both understand your customer and what they're asking, but then also like, where do you differentiate? And then what's that matrix of product features and benefits, and, being able to look at that in the long tail, so that you can, I think, be ready for those conversations.
correct.
And I'm curious, like, where do you see, like, is there a trend that kind of marketers should be paying attention to, or sort of how fast is this evolving? What do you
Whew.
expect this to look like?
I don't have a crystal ball. I will say that the quickness with which all of this is evolving is amazing. I think that anybody who's anybody who's being serious about helping their brand show up the way that they want it to in the answer world is ahead right now, but in by the end of the year I think it'll be entirely table stakes.
Yeah.
And if we talk about it, I know, we talk about it with literally every client that comes through our door now. And it's not because we're bringing it up, it's because they're like, for the most part, they're saying, gosh, you heard about this thing called AEO, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Our site traffic is down. Do you think that's
Mhm.
why? Things like that. So, I, yeah, I don't know. I mean, like the technology is going to evolve. The way that the bots are, parsing and aggregating and spitting back the internet to you is going to continue to evolve. We will keep, one step ahead of it. That's my hope anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, very, very quickly.
Yeah. And even, for like, one of the common pieces of advice for the last 6 months has been to, like, well, use Reddit to be able to have
Yeah,
those question and answer pairs. And now, like, Reddit traffic has gone down substantially. So I think
right.
ChatGPT is only referencing Reddit maybe like 1% of the time, where they were
Hmm.
going and referencing a higher percentage of the time. Um,
I wonder, and I don't know why that is logistically. I do know that it is difficult as a marketer to have an authentic voice in Reddit. You got to be really good at
yep.
at twisting that to, hey, let's talk about this brand. Because
Yeah.
boy, is that a community that it'll get you booted faster. It'll make your head spin. So that's a particular skill that, I think a very few people are really, truly great at.
Yeah.
And I don't know if maybe that's maybe the reason that, ChatGPT is referencing in that less, but it's, I mean, yeah, I don't know. That's just my kind of my 2 cents. That's a hard row to hoe.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think it gets to your point though, which is around like speed and flexibility, and
yeah,
then understand your customer, have the basics in place, and then be ready with, the technology and tools to be able to assist within that, but
yes,
understanding that there is no magic wand, there
nope,
is no one size fits all, and that whatever is the guidance today likely will change really quickly, in 2 days. For like the hacks is what I would say. The hacks are going to go in, and just like early SEO, which is probably more akin to where we are today, which is early SEO, that will start to shift. So I think, you know ultimately, writing for people, being able to optimize for robots, just like, have a great story, have metadata, have, an LLMO.txt, and then there's also the schema markup that's happening. which Webflow rolled out like 2 weeks ago.
Mhm.
They now have the ability where you can have more of that defined schema markup. But the sort of the big thing here is getting ready for this long tail of question answers being really specific. As you were talking about Reddit, something I was thinking about as well is, ultimately, like, advertising is going to start to make its way into these engines. We're already starting to see some stuff
Correct.
where even commerce is making it in, so that you can buy directly from, I believe it was ChatGPT has an integration with Shopify so that you can like
Mhm.
actually search and buy without actually hitting on the site. And it starts to change the role of the site, which is around kind of like a training engine in some ways.
Mhm.
But there's also things where you're going to want to, maybe as you're going from awareness consideration, jumping in and having, that more kind of curated way of looking at that. But I would, if I was like a guessing person, um, around like the dip, and again, like this is totally speculative, but the dip between Reddit, it's that these engines are getting ready for advertising. What are advertisers like? They're referencing
Right.
the New York Times, they're referencing like traditional media, they're referencing a lot of things where it works well within the advertising space. And then they're kind of, uh, I guess, helping to contribute or being a good player within there so that, because if there's not content for these engines, then there's not going to be, answers for the people that they're serving them up to. So I think trying to back out to like that larger picture is one of the things that will be interesting to see happen over the next few weeks or
Yeah,
months, right?
absolutely. Months. Yeah, I mean, hey, could be weeks.
Yep.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah. What else are you thinking about as it relates to this? Obviously, there's a ton to be said, and we've got, some questions that have been thrown our way.
Oh, we do. We
And
have questions. Where are they?
well, I mean, it's just like, there are some ones that were sent over kind of ahead of time.
Okay.
And one of them was just like, and I think you started answering it at the top of the call, but, is SEO dead or dying? And,
Right.
where will AEO fit within that?
Yeah, and I don't think it's necessarily certainly not dead yet. I think that there are some things that are definitely shifting that we will have to be, aware of and moving towards. So we're moving obviously um, from links to answers. So old SEO, the success was ranking number one on the page. Users click, you get
Yep.
traffic, and now with AEO, it's many searches end with a zero click answer. So as I said, being the chosen answer is
Mhm.
now as valuable or maybe more than ranking number one, right?
Yep.
There's also, with Google's AI overviews and Bing's AI results and ChatGPT, they're aggregating and summarizing things. So instead of users having a menu of 10 links to choose from, they're going to be served synthesized answers, which is where that consistency and clarity and brand positioning and strategic language is going to come into play. Because if you're saying something and they pick up on it that is more unique and more differentiated, then you're going to get the click, right? Next, I guess, would be that user behavior has changed. Queries aren't just. I mean, queries were never just a keyword. I'm
Yep.
honestly not sure why we settled on just like, I think it's just the way that it worked, so that we had like one word to beat them all, right? Well, queries are longer, they're more conversational, they're more intent driven. People expect immediate, accurate answers and not to just scroll through pages and pages of stuff, right? So that means that the onus is on your own properties to, if they get to when they get to your website, to give them what they want, like immediately. They're starting down further down the funnel in a lot of cases. Um, let's see, search engines and AI systems prioritize, as I was talking about, authority and trustworthy sources. Keyword stuffing is dead. So
Yep.
you need to make sure that you are creating proprietary content. That is another thing that I would, mention to clients and to people who are really wanting to show up. There's maybe, you can kind of creating repeatable content to some degree, or you have been able to, but now you got to create it, or you're just not going to show up. You're gonna be invisible. And then structured data is equals visibility for these things. As we were talking about schema markup, that LLMO.txt file, things that are, properly formatted. Or again, the bot's going to take the path of least resistance. Tell it what you want it to know and be
Yeah.
real clear about it in the language that they can understand. So
Yeah.
I think that, it's a hybrid strategy. We're doing a little of both.
Yeah. And I think that as there's, even some of these tools that can then go and quickly make, question answer pairs, I think being really careful about those where if it's just slop, then slop isn't actually going to get the, it will be derivative and not necessarily in a positive way to a brand. Um, well, I think as we're kind of closing out here, maybe one of my last questions, which can set up the next conversation, because we wanted to be able to bring Zane in around
Yes.
CRO. Do you think that AEO is having a negative impact on CRO, or what's sort of the relationship there? If we're having less traffic come to a site, then what's the value of doing that conversion rate optimization, or how do those two things work together?
I just think that they work together. I think that it's just understanding that the mindset of the person who is getting to your site is probably going to be a little different than it used to be.
Yeah.
So where we might have been starting with, purely awareness more often, you're getting people jumping into your pool at consideration now. And so that means that when you're doing that testing and optimization and creating those messages that are kind of, going to take them around through the funnel the way you want them to, you have to start somewhere different. So I think it's going to make the intent and shape of websites change a little bit.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to hear what Zane has to say about this, because I'm sure he has a million thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really, in some ways, like, yes, there can be slightly more traffic that's coming to the site potentially. But that traffic that does come, that it needs to be directed and personalized and
Yes,
optimized, like
exactly.
100%. Like, no longer can it just be the site can't operate as just like a brochure that's static and like,
I feel
oh,
like we've been saying that for like a decade, and it doesn't mean that we haven't made strides toward making websites less brochure like. We
yeah,
definitely think about it a lot differently, but this is the next step. It can't
yeah.
be. You
It,
can't open up the Sears catalog. This is not.
yeah, yeah. Like, it's not about like, 90 seconds of dwell time anymore. Like,
Right.
those question answer pairs like have to be very directed, have to be able to fit the job to be done and what someone is trying to accomplish there.
Exactly.
And I think what's been exciting for us, and I think Zane can talk about next time, is now with like Webflow optimized, like we can actually like design for that in one environment, be able to see how that's performing, and then quickly start to make those adjustments. And then the next level of that is like starting to make those adjustments and then creating that long tail of content that can be personalized, right? So
Correct.
everyone loves to talk about personalization, but unless you have the content that has been prepared and planned, then it doesn't really mean anything, right? So what are you personalizing for? So I think that'll be maybe one of the next bridges that we can start to evaluate. And Kendra, I'd love, if you're up for it, just to continue this as a conversation around like,
Yeah.
what are we seeing as a snapshot, and then being able to report back on it and getting, feedback from different people.
I
Obviously,
would love
next
to do
time as
that.
well, we'll have more figured
We'll
out
have a
around
real LinkedIn Live.
we'll have like an actual, like, we'll be able to make sure that that was set up and all that sort of stuff. It makes like I don't know, like, why does
I think it's
LinkedIn
so
have to
hard.
be like so awkward and hard? It's like it's the digital like awkward office party that
Yes.
you're just like having trouble finding directions to for no apparent reason. And it's not like they don't have money. So anyway, that's my rant.
That's your rant on
uh
LinkedIn. Yeah.
yeah, but
Riverside's probably listening and going, yeah. But
yeah, yeah. But yeah, and I would say that as there's questions, throw them into the comments. I believe we, throw them in on Twitter as well. We'll be able to address more of them next time.
Absolutely. Great talking to you. Look forward to
Yeah,
doing the
good to
next one.
see you as well. Thanks, Kendra. Okay, bye.
Bye.